Before we go any further, just want to thank all the people over on Patreon, because without their help, none of this upgraded content that you'd be seeing would be possible. Over on the Patreon, you get exclusive sneak peeks at upcoming videos. You also get access to the Patreon only Discord server. Coming up soon, I'm going to be working on talking about other anime that I can't talk about here on YouTube, like say ReZero, Konosuba, and etc. I'm also going to start posting the scripts for video essays, and every 3 months we do an anime and manga haul. We also are going to open up the Patreon only Discord server to YouTube members at the $2 price tier, which also means that members will be seeing their name here alongside the patron. But with that being said, let's get back into today's video. Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another review for Boruto Naruto Next Generations episode 273, and the Academy arc with Himawari is finally done. I know there's a lot of people who are gonna be very excited about this, because this arc was very much so one of those arcs, either you liked it or you hated it. There was no in between when it comes to this arc. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and get some of my initial thoughts out of the way before we get into the recap portion of the review. So I gotta say, I did like what you saw with Kawaki and Himawari inside of that paper dome. That was a nice homage to the Land of Waves arc, where you had Haku and the ice mirrors. I thought it was kind of nice to see that, and how Hana was able to maintain that jutsu for a while, and you had an opportunity to actually see Himawari play a role in the fight. I was not really a fan of how Kawaki was used during that. I get the whole thing of you want to take the time to show that Kawaki's embracing Naruto's teachings of relying on his own chakra and natural born body, but the whole purpose of transition episodes and anime original arcs is you're supposed to be setting the stage for the stuff that happens in the manga. Does Kawaki use ninjutsu in the manga? Yes, but Kawaki right now should be moving closer and closer towards saying, hey, the way Jigen did things, that was right. This ninja stuff, I ain't really a fan of it. And what you saw in this episode right here is essentially Kawaki's like, hey, I'm gonna be a ninja. I'm not gonna transform my body into any of the ninja tech to protect Himawari. I'm just gonna use my own body. The other thing on there is that I understand why they didn't kill Hana Sensei. I totally understand that, the whole idea of like, hey, I'm just gonna seal her away with the sealing jutsu and keep her in a small portion of my mind. And you had Naruto reflecting on Kurama. I understand the fan service portion of that, but that's something I think is gonna be a little bit more divisive with a lot of people, because you know, Kai staying alive is one thing. Hana, it kind of feels like she runs the risk of becoming another Shino, where she's a little underappreciated at the academy. But on the bright side though, this episode did have moments where you had good flow, you had good squash and stretch, you had good bounce elements. That whole train sequence was one of the better animated cuts out of the entire episode. That was just a joy to look at from an animation perspective. That one and that sequence where you had Hana Sensei and she began to start losing control, and you saw how the school teacher version of Hana began to retake control. I thought everything from the visual effects to just the basic cues of animation, I thought that was well done. From an animation perspective, it wasn't a bad episode. However, I'm not a fan of this episode. Both things can be true. Can you have a well animated episode and the episode itself not be anything that you're super excited about? Yes. Now we got that out of the way, let's get into the recap portion. I like how the episode opens up with Kawaki and Himawari, and they're in their battle against Hana Sensei. Hana's using a fire release jutsu that's shooting off a huge torrent of fire release attacks, and Kawaki gets to one moment where he saves Himawari. He's holding her in her hands, and Kawaki ends up getting surrounded by the fire release attacks, and what we end up seeing is that essentially that was a shadow clone the entire time. And so when Hana thinks that she's landed the hit on Kawaki, it's actually a shadow clone, and Kawaki announces his presence from the sky, almost lands a sneak attack on her, and you get this moment where Kawaki and Himawari begin to double team Hana Sensei. Hana has an exploding kunai, it lands on the ground, it doesn't go off because Kawaki slapped it out of her hand before she was able to start the detonation process. You have Hana using the real Hana inside of her body, where when Kawaki tries to attack, she puts on the voice of Hana the teacher. It makes Kawaki pause for a moment, and that's all it takes for Hana to pull out her trump card. And I will say this much, this was a very much Naruto-esque thing to do, where essentially Hana saved her trump card for the very end, which is what you're supposed to do. When you have a jutsu like this, you don't whip it out at the very start of the fight unless it's it's an integral part of your strategy. Similar how Hoki was able to expend a lot of chakra against Inojin during the tuning exams to use that giant earth release jutsu, but it was all part of a bigger strategy. Well, with Hana, what she's doing here, she has that big paper dome and she can see inside the paper dome, but Kawaki and Himawari seemingly can't, and she's able to attack them from all angles. And so you have Kawaki and Himawari trying to avoid the fire release of shooting down inside of it. Meanwhile, Hana reveals that there's going to be a ship filled with Jonin caliber fighters who are going to be showing up, and we learn later on in the episode that Sai's team has basically taken out all those Jonin caliber fighters that are on that ship, which that speaks volumes to how good of a sensei Sai actually is, because those boys on his team were absolute garbage before he got his hands on them. So Sai very quietly is making the case for being the best trainer out of all the members of Naruto's generation, because Sai's team ate up. Meanwhile, you have Himawari's classmates trying to make it to the shore. That way they can alert Konoha. The scene then shifts back over to the inside of the paper dome. We have Kawaki taking attacks to protect Himawari in order to buy her time to use a Byakugan. And once Himawari catches a whiff of where Hana is, she begins tracking her down and using the gentle fist in order to attack the paper dome to open up windows for Kawaki to attack. From a writing perspective, I understand why they did this, because Kawaki initially didn't want Himawari to do anything to do with this mission, and you see Kawaki relying on Himawari, learning a little bit about teamwork. I understand why they did this. I just think that when you look at the overall connection to where Kawaki is in the manga, I don't think that this is the arc that need to showcase Kawaki understanding teamwork. I'm be very curious to see how they explain what they get to when they adapt chapter 58 of the manga. But it's through the teamwork of Himawari and Kawaki that they're eventually able to make Hana waste up enough chakra to where the school teacher version of Hana is able to start fighting her way to the surface. All the classmates show up and they all get a chance to say their lines so the voice actors can get their checks, and you see Hana fully wake up because the power of friendship is on full effect, and you get this great transition scene where you see Himawari going up to Hana and Hana shedding tears. Everyone gets a beautiful happy ending at this point. Being honest with you, the only thing that kept me from throwing up when I seen this scene is the fact that the animation when Hana was fighting to regain control, and you see how the assassin version of Hana was running out of chakra to suppress her. That was the only thing that kept me from just throwing up, because I was groaning as the classmates were calling out to Hana. But that one series of cuts where you see Hana fighting control, that was well done, and that kind of saved this whole scene from just being just downright disgusting. But I want to make this clear, that's not a knock on the animation. The animation wasn't the problem, it was the writing. This is a great example of we got cool ideas, but the execution just fell flat. And this is just my opinion. At the end of the day, you might feel one way, and if you do, I'm very curious to know your thoughts in the comment section, because I'm always open to other perspectives. As long as there's some substance behind it, I have no problem with discourse or anything like that. If you think the writing's good, let me know down in the comment section beyond just, oh, I thought the writing was good. Add some substance to it. I enjoy reading those comments like that. The only time I really get annoyed is where somebody says, oh, you're just hating on it. Like, I tell you exactly why I like or dislike something and then kind of move on from it from there. I thought good animation, and in certain spots of the episode, the animation was very well done, to the point where there are some cuts in this episode that I would put against any of the other cuts that we had in this entire arc. For instance, that train sequence, I absolutely love everything about that train sequence, from the pose to pose to the bounce elements to the way that you had like the hair and the wind flapping, and the way that you had some of the character acting going on with Kai's eyes shaking and the way that her face was going. Between that and that sequence, so you had the great squash and stretch with Boruto's face at the end of the episode, where that squash and stretch scene really combined the exaggeration aspect of animation. But I loved it. I just think that this was a weak written episode, though. Even for as weakly written as I thought that the episode itself was, I like how they stayed consistent with Himawari's character. Like I talked about a couple months ago, the people saying the anime ruined Himawari's character, they overreacted because this episode confirms the very thing I told you guys, which is that what you're seeing with Himawari is not inconsistent with what's in the manga, because in the manga she hasn't made her mind up on whether or not she's gonna be a shinobi, and guess what, in the anime she hasn't made her mind up on whether or not she's gonna be a shinobi. She says as much in the episode itself. You see Boruto really get offended when Naruto tells Boruto like, hey, your little sister's more mature than you were at her age, and the episode ends up closing off with Kawaki smiling as he's looking down at the photos of himself and all of his classmates. But again, this arc, and I really feel like this episode is gonna be one of those episodes, either you're going to enjoy it or you're gonna be somebody like me who feels like, yeah, I don't know about this one. But I'm not gonna hide it, there were parts of the episode that looked good, but I was not a fan of the overall episode, and with the arc closing the way it was, even though there are nice parts to the arc itself, this arc for me went from being a 6, which is fine, it's not good, it's just fine, but it's not average. It went from that to a 4. I'm gonna have to rewatch the arc itself and maybe I come up to a 5, but it's no longer a 6. But if I give it a 4, it's gonna be what I gave the Nue arc, which is I gave the Nue arc a 4. And given how much this arc paid homage to it, if they're trying to recreate those feelings, they did. So my chapter question to you guys is, what would you rank this arc from 1 to 10? Let me know where you rank that, and also let me know which character do you think in this entire arc had the most character development. While you think that over, click here for my Black Clover chapter 342 review, or click here for this Naruto Explained video.